You know that scene? It's in like every movie where a couple buys a house.
Oh, I know the one.
They walk into an office, sign one piece of paper, the agent hands over these shiny keys, champagne pops.
And boom, they're home. Instant.
Exactly. It's romantic.
Yeah.
And if you go into the Jamaican property market expecting that, well, you are in for a very, very bewildering ride.
That is definitely not how it works. In fact, if you try to apply that movie logic to Jamaica, you're going to hit a wall pretty hard.
So what are we looking at today?
We're looking at a fascinating source, a guide called Laying the Foundations, a measured journey through buying property in Jamaica from this year, 2026. And it just right off the bat reframes the whole thing.
How so?
It says buying a home, there isn't a transaction. It's a declaration of intent.
A declaration of intent. That phrase really stuck with me. It sounds less like buying a condo and more like, I don't know, international diplomacy.
It really is. The authors describe it as this quiet, decisive moment. But the central metaphor they use, and this is going to guide our whole conversation, is construction.
Construction.
Yeah. They argue that buying property in Jamaica isn't an obstacle course, which is how it often feels to outsiders. Instead, they want you to think of the legal process itself as a carefully staged construction.
That's an interesting flip. Usually we think of construction as the house itself, the bricks, the mortar.
The physical thing, right. But here, the source is saying the paperwork is the construction project.
Okay.
The whole premise is that the legal system there is designed for certainty, not for speed. You are literally building a foundation of trust and law. And just like building a real house, if you miss one step or misunderstand one cost,
Or a whole thing starts to wobble.
precisely, you rush the foundation, the walls crack. So our mission in this deep dive is to decode that quiet architecture of the law. We're going to look at the hidden costs that blindside buyers.
The stuff that isn't on the sticker price.
Exactly. And why, in this specific market, patience is actually your most valuable currency.
It's the one resource you can't buy.
But it's the one you need the most.
So let's grab our hard hats then. If we're sticking with this construction analogy, most people think the starting point is, finding the house. The romantic part.
Scrolling through listings, imagining where the sofa goes.
Right. But that's the first trap, isn't it? The guide says the journey doesn't start with bricks and mortar. It starts with arithmetic.
The boring part.
Or the scary part, depending on your bank account.
The critical part. They call it the load-bearing calculation. Before you even look at a single listing, you have to talk to a lender.
But isn't that standard everywhere? You get pre-approved, you go shopping.
In a way, yes. But here, the source really emphasizes that pre-approval isn't just some bureaucratic hoop you jump through. Think of it as the engineering report that tells you how high you can safely build.
Without that, you're just building on sand.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. The source notes that this stage alone, just getting the bank to say yes, can take weeks.
Weeks, just to find out what I can spend.
It can. It all depends on how tidy your paperwork is. If you're a salaried employee, it's faster. But if you're self-employed or have money coming from overseas, the bank has to verify everything.
So you need to treat your financial documents like architectural blueprints. If the blueprints are messy, the permit gets denied.
That's a perfect way to put it. You need structural integrity in your finances.
Okay, so let's say the blueprints are good. You get the green light, you find the house. And the source suggests that even while you're picking out curtains in your head, you're actually locking in these structural elements of the deal.
Right. When you make an offer, you're not just agreeing on a price. You're agreeing on the completion timeline, the financing contingencies. These are the steel beams of the transaction. And once those are agreed, you move to the agreement for sale.
This is where the lawyers come in, because the source is very heavy on this. This is not a DIY market.
Absolutely not. In Jamaica, attorneys are central. They draft and negotiate the agreement for sale. And this brings us to a really specific point about the deposit that catches a lot of people off guard.
The deposit.
Yeah.
That's usually about 10%. Right?
Yeah, 10% is common practice. But here's the thing. You don't just hand that money over to the seller.
Which is what you'd expect. I give you money, you give me the house.
Not yet. That deposit, it typically sits with the vendor's attorney. It's held in trust.
Wait, so the seller doesn't even get the cash. Why?
Because that money has a job to do. It's often used later to pay the taxes and costs required to complete the sale.
Ah, okay. So it's not profit yet. It's operating capital for the transaction itself. It pays the fees.
Exactly. It greases the gears of the government agencies, and once that agreement is signed, you enter what the guide calls the unglamorous phase.
I think they also called it the sludge of the process.
They did. This is where the romance definitely dies.
This is the part where the silence sets in, right? You
Yeah.
signed, you're excited, and then nothing.
For a while, yeah. But it's not inactivity, it's invisible activity. This is due diligence. Your legal team is running title searches, checking for encumbrances, caveats, boundary issues.
Okay, let's clarify those terms. When you say encumbrances or caveats, what are we really talking about?
Think of them as legal sticky notes on the property file. A caveat might be a warning that someone else claims an interest in the land, maybe an ex-spouse. An encumbrance could be a restriction, like a utility line running right where you want to build a pool.
And if you don't find those sticky notes before you buy,
You inherit them. You buy the problem. And specifically for apartments, they're checking for strata arrears.
that's like the HOA or condo board.
Exactly. If the previous owner hasn't paid their maintenance fees for 5 years, that debt is attached to the unit. Your lawyer has to make sure that's cleared up. Otherwise, surprise, you owe the building money.
Sounds tedious, but absolutely necessary.
It is. They're also checking for unpaid property taxes. But think about the alternative. You could buy a property only to find out someone else has a claim on it.
So this delay, it isn't just island time or people being slow.
No, and that's the philosophical shift the source wants us to make. The delay is the price of certainty. The system prioritizes registered ownership and legal clarity over speed.
They want to make sure that when you get that title, it's bulletproof.
Precisely. The documents go to the stamp office, taxes get paid, then it goes to the titles office. It's a rigid sequence. You can't put the roof on before the walls are up.
I like that reframing.
Yeah.
It helps with the frustration. But let's talk about the thing that needs the most protection. The wallet.
The money.
The source says people don't stumble on the house price. They stumble on the layers beneath
The
it.
hidden numbers. The sticker shock of the closing process.
Okay, let's break this down. Let's start with the seller, the vendor. I was surprised by how much they pay.
It's significant for the seller. First, you have the transfer tax. That's a statutory cost, fixed at 2% of the value.
Okay, 2% right off the top.
Then the agent's commission, usually 5%. But, and this is a big but, you have to add GCT on top of that commission.
GCT, General Consumption Tax.
Correct. It's basically VAT, and that's 15%. But it's 15% of the commission, not the house price.
Let's do the math on that. If the agent charges 5% and you tax that fee by 15%.
The total commission cost becomes 5.75% of the sale price.
Got it. So between transfer tax and the commission, we're already at almost 8%.
And we haven't touched legal fees. When you add everything up, the source says a vendor's total cost often lands in the 10 to 12% range.
Wow, that is substantial. If you sell a house for $20 million, you might only see 17 or 18 million of that.
It changes the affordability calculation completely. Now, for the buyer, the costs are lower, but they accumulate. If you're a cash buyer, you're looking at maybe 4 to 6% in closing costs.
Still a healthy amount, but then there's the mortgage twist.
Right. If you're borrowing money, the costs go up. There's a specific fee for registering the mortgage itself. It's 0.5%.
0.5% of the property value.
You know, and this is crucial. It's 0.5% of the loan amount. So the more you borrow, the more you pay.
I see. It's a tax on debt.
Yeah.
And what about shared costs? I think stamp duty was one.
Yes. Stamp duty is now largely flat rates, around $5,000 per instrument. Usually the buyer and seller split that. The registration fee is also often split 50-50.
Okay, so lots of little percentages slicing away the budget. But there was one warning in the source that really stood out. It was about the stamp office and market value.
Oh, this is fascinating. This is where the government asserts its authority. Let's say you want to sell your house to your cousin for half of what it's worth. A family deal.
Right, keep the taxes low because the percentage cost will be smaller.
Seems clever, but the stamp office is wise to that. The source warns, market value has a way of reasserting itself.
What does that mean?
It means the stamp office can assess the tax based on what the property is actually worth, not just the number you wrote on the paper. They have their own valuation division.
So they act as an appraiser of last resort.
Essentially, if a deal looks underpriced, they will question it and tax you on the real value. It's another layer of that certainty. The system is designed to prevent shortcuts.
Which brings us back to the one resource you can't buy. Time.
Time as a material.
We know it's not instant. But what are the actual timelines? If I have the cash ready to go, how fast are we talking?
Cash, a clean title, and responsive pros. You're looking at 30 to 90 days.
3 months max. That actually feels manageable.
That's the best case scenario. But if you introduce a mortgage, the realistic planning window shifts to 3 to 6 months.
6 months. Half a year just to get the keys. That's a long time.
sometimes longer. And the source points out that delays are rarely one big dramatic failure. It's not like the deal just blows up.
It's not a car crash, it's a traffic jam.
Exactly. A slow accumulation of small things. A missing document. A valuation report that's a week late. A question about the title that needs an answer.
And because it's a sequence, a construction, you can't move to step C until step B is done.
Correct. You can't lodge the transfer until the stamp office has stamped the documents. You can't stamp the documents until the taxes are paid. If one link breaks, the whole chain stops.
This brings us to a really poetic idea in the source. The quiet architecture of law. Every property has a history, and in Jamaica, that history can be deep.
Very deep. The source mentions family land.
Right. Unpack that for us. That's more than just land owned by a family, isn't it?
It's a specific cultural and legal concept. It often involves inherited property where the title might not be clear-cut for generations. Maybe great-grandpa left it to all his children, but the paperwork was never formalized.
So now you have cousins all over the world who might have a claim.
Exactly. And if you try to buy a piece of that, you are stepping into a legal maze. Who actually has the authority to sell? The source puts it beautifully. No two properties have the same history.
So you're not just buying the land, you're buying its history.
You're inheriting its legal narrative, and that's why the source is so adamant about using licensed professionals, attorneys, surveyors, because the fees aren't just based on a statute, they're based on complexity.
It's not a flat rate because the work isn't flat.
Exactly. A messy title history means your lawyer has to do more excavation. And they also warn about mortgages. Interest rates are only part of the story.
Because the fees can redraw the budget.
Yes. A low interest rate might come with high processing fees or strict insurance requirements. You have to look at the whole picture.
So what does this all mean? Feels, I don't know, a little intimidating. We've talked about sludge, hidden taxes, 6-month waits.
It can be. But the source argues that once you understand the structure, the intimidation fades. It stops being a scary obstacle course and starts looking, as they say, almost elegant.
Elegant. That's a strong word for bureaucracy.
In its own way it is. It's a system that forces you to be deliberate. It rewards preparation, not impatience. It requires you to respect the taxes assessed, documents scrutinized, and timelines imposed.
It sounds like it forces you to slow down and appreciate the gravity of what you're doing. You're not just buying a product off a shelf. Yeah.
That is a beautiful way to put it. It's about building a foundation. If you try to rush it, the house won't stand. But if you respect the process, you end up with something secure.
You end up with that certainty. You know that when you finally hold that title, it's really yours.
And for anyone listening, the takeaway is that preparation is everything. Budget beyond the deposit, expect the stamp office to be thorough, and understand that the timeline is not entirely in your control and that that's okay.
It's a bespoke build.
Every single transaction.
You know, this brings up a really provocative thought for me. We live in a world of instant gratification, same-day delivery, tap to pay. The Jamaican property system is practically a rebellion against that. It forces you to stop.
It does. It demands your attention.
So if every transaction is a bespoke build shaped by its own history, it makes you wonder, what does the specific history of your potential property say about its future value? If you have to wait 6 months to unravel the story of the land, is the history you uncover worth that wait?
That's the ultimate question. Is the certainty worth the patience? The Jamaican system bets that it is.
I think that's something for all of us to mull over. That's all for this deep dive into the architecture of patience. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.